Welcome to the Two Average Painters YouTube channel. My name's Hugh and today we're going to be converting the World Eater's Combat Patrol. But before we start on the conversion, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you enjoyed it, and let us know in the comments down below. Our first conversion today is the Master of Executions. We'll be using parts from the main kit as well as the Eightbound kit, as I'm not a massive fan of the model. I'm really looking forward to seeing if I can make anything that I like the look of. Now with the base of the kit in hand, I'm going to look to take off the right arm and put something more appropriate with the World Eaters, as well as use the Eightbound arm on the other side, as I think that will also fit nicely. I started removing the shoulder pad with the clippers, keeping it as close to the model as possible, and then using my hobby knife to make a more accurate cut, then using it to flatten out the edge just to make it more smooth for connection points. I then place the backplate and the chest piece from the Eightbound kit on the model to see how it would fit. To do this, I remove the back connector as I won't be needing this. I do this with the clippers, keeping it as close to the model as possible while taking as much material off as I can. I then dry fit and tack the Eightbound kit together. Just so I can put the Eightbound arm on the model, as I feel like it would fit really well with the chain axe, as I feel like it's more World Eaters and Khorne would have definitely imbued the Master of Execution with some power, which kind of leads to that arm being larger than a normal Space Marine's. Using this Eightbound arm and a hand from the original kit, I was able to make the model more identifiable, matching up the wrist with the hand, making sure that each of the connection points would work. The Eightbound arm also comes with this chain that would normally connect to a weapon, so I kind of had a look to see if there was anything that I could do with it, but later ended up cutting it away. As for the hand, it has an overlapping wrist connection, so what I did is made a small incision into that and then went down with the hobby knife, gently putting a pressure until the hand popped away. Next I did another test to see how it would fit and then cut away the excess material from the Eightbound arm. Testing again to see if it would line up okay, I then was able to glue this in, glue tack it onto the model and test fit everything. Which then leaves us with this at this current point in time. Moving on to the backpack, using the Eightbound kit again for this, I was then able to get part of the Legionnaire's backpack kits and put that on to this, kind of to make it look a little bit more unique. I went with the option of having the Space Marine head on the pike because I kind of thought that matched the theme quite well. Again, test fitting the parts just to make sure that they looked okay with the overall model. Which currently leaves us with this. Next up, the head, because everybody needs one. I went through a couple of variations of helmeted and non-helmeted options, and then I ended up with this one that looks a little bit more stern, a little bit more cold and calculated for a World Eater, but I still think would fit quite nicely with the character. As for the base, I opted to give him a little bit more height so he stands above the models, so I just placed a couple of pieces of cork down, and then raided my Battlefield Bits box from Citadel to find some sister skulls because that's what they will be facing. Before finally gluing the pieces of cork down with PVA just so they hold in place. before putting the model on the base for the ground reveal. But before that, we've got a few more conversions to do. For my leader of my Jackals, I wanted to do something that would really stand out. Using this totem guy, I got this banner from the AOS starter kit for Khorne, which is actually a really good place to get 40k bits that fit the theme really nicely. Up to this point, I've built the model as instructed, keeping the original arm that he has for the totem but leaving the top off. Measuring the staff just up against the shield to see how it fit. As you can see, that's not big enough, which is what she said. But anyway, stupid kids jokes aside, I then cut the two parts of the pole just to be able to glue later, chop the nubs off the shield and then put the hand up against it to later glue it into place. Moving back over to the backpack just to make sure that everything fits, and how would he leave home with his sandwiches if he didn't have that on his back anyway. Gluing the backpack then onto the back of the model and then lining up the flag to make sure that it doesn't interfere with it too much. I then focused on my connection points just so the top of the banner wasn't floating, and as we all know, Khorne doesn't really like magic, so it definitely is not allowed to float. Then permanently gluing the banner down and using sprue glue just to make sure that the connection is super strong, as these points are very small. Which currently leaves us with this. I then carefully try and line up the poles and make sure that the banner fits as nicely as possible. There might be an easy way to do this, but this is kind of the way that I went about it. I did also have to make a few adjustments to the pole's length. A key thing to note is taking off as little plastic as you can. You can always take more away, but you can never add on. And then the final couple of stages was getting a head. I used the one from the new Kill Team Goremongers because I thought that kind of fit quite nicely with his aesthetic. Which left me with this, and the last bits were just building as the instructions intended, leaving me with just the Daemon Prince to convert. For this conversion, I will build the base of the Daemon Prince and then add parts from the AOS Daemon Prince kit and Angron spare parts that I have. I did build the kit as per the instructions for the combat patrol. However, you could use the alternative feat or potentially 8-bound feat, which is an option that I was looking at. As can be seen here, I have thought about painting this Daemon Prince as either normal World Eaters or in the colours of the Desecrators, which is from the Codex. So you'll have to let me know in the comments what you like. Moving on, I prefer the arm from the AOS Daemon Prince, so I'll use that one as well as the one for the normal 40k, as you can see here. However, moving on to the backpack, just so we can test fit and ensure everything we do now lines up. The idea for this is using the icon from Angron and placing it on the top or possibly the centre of the backpack, whatever it looks best at the time. I haven't glued anything at this point. I've just kind of got everything test fitted just so we can move around and have the most posability possible. Cutting the top icon off with a hobby knife just to make sure that I can get a smooth cut, opting to use a small amount of pressure, just slightly increasing it, keeping it as close to the base as possible, then trimming and shaving it just to make sure that it's a flat edge. Again, testing to see if I like the look of that before deciding what I wanted to do. Opting to then go for on top of the banner because I think that one looks a little bit better in my opinion. I then cut the top spikes off the backpack and create a smooth surface by then shaving with my hobby knife and a file just to create that flat spot. So when we do glue the icon on, it's got somewhere nice to grab hold of. And when I said file, I mean a weird nail file that I've had for ages. It seems to always do the job for me. I haven't ever used sanding stick before, but it's something that I definitely want to look into in the future. So again, if anybody has any recommendations, please let me know. I then test fit to make sure that the icon fits on top okay, using both the sides just to kind of work as my guide to make sure that everything fits on properly and where it should do, and nothing's going to overlap when I do start to glue things together. I did at this point have to fiddle around a little bit just with the positioning, just to make sure that it was a little bit further than some of the waves. I didn't want to cut anything off the backpack, so it is something to note if you are going to do this conversion, just to kind of look out for that. Now I can glue the icon into place, securing it permanently with the plastic cement. Just remember guys that your best friend is a dry fit. Don't listen to your mother when she says that it is your brother. It is definitely dry fitting. Which again leaves me at this point with this. Moving on to the gauntlet and the weapon. I did take the wrist off the AOS model to fit the gauntlet on. It is quite a tight squeeze, so you'll notice that I will cut a lot of areas off both of them just to kind of make them fit, but they do fit quite well once you've done those adjustments. Again, at this point I was testing out just to see if there was areas where I could just kind of fit it around, slot it in. Maybe you might be able to make it work. Unfortunately I wasn't on the day, but that's how it goes. There was a fair bit of gap filling with the process that I did. I ended up getting some spikes and putting them in, and then getting some sprue goo, but you can't really notice it on the end result. Unfortunately I didn't film that, but I will show you as much as I can from what I've got. Here I'm just taking some thickness out of the inside of the material, and I'll also take some of the thickness out of the wrists just to kind of make everything fit just a little bit nicer. Making sure again to test fit the parts as much as possible. You can always take off more material than you can add, remember that. It's at this point that I take off the pipes that won't be connecting to anything. As you can see, they kind of just dangle down. Just using my clippers just to take them off, and then going back in with my hobby knife just to smooth off any of the edges. With this little one, I just wanted to test again just to make sure that it didn't actually connect to the arm fully. Just again to tie it back into the 40k model a little bit more than just the AOS arm, which it kind of fits quite nicely, so I ended up gluing that there. This is the point where I get the good old sprue glue out, and you can see the spikes there, and just start to essentially build up a base around it just to kind of fill in. And I also get this little icon just to kind of test fit to see if it kind of works in that area, just to kind of hide some of the gaps that have formed. As again you can see here just on the left hand side, just a closer up angle of the icon being put on, just to kind of fill in a little bit of space. It's at this point that I do a bit more sprue gluing, and I start to fill in the gap that's in the arm of the AOS miniature. That won't be visible in the final result because we'll be able to smooth that out. I also take this opportunity to do a bit more gap filling in the gauntlet just to make sure that there's no obvious holes. Again, just building up small layers and just filling in that gap slowly over time, just letting the glue just kind of dry a little bit, then adding a bit more on just to create some more. Moving on to the weapons, and just a quick side note, I think this would be a really good Emperor's Children Daemon Prince just because of the pose that he's in. It's quite menacing and it looks like he's quite the bladesman. So if you are following along, this might be a quite good divergent point. However, I do want to kind of try and use the axe, see if there's a position that works. I'm not going to glue it on at this point just because I think it might interfere with the head. I could potentially swap the arm orientation round, having the axe facing a different orientation might work, but I think ultimately I might end up having to go with the sword, which again isn't a bad option, but I kind of feel like World Eaters go a bit better with axes. I also start to look at the holes that are in the chest plate. I opted to go with the chain that normally would hang on Angron's neck, and I wanted to have a little look at a chain that was potentially hanging out of the other one. It was at this point again that I did a bit more smoothing out of that arm just to make sure that everything kind of fit as nicely and looked as aesthetic as it can possibly look. I also put on the shoulder pads at this point, using half of the one from the AOS kit because I think that looks like the small World Eaters pauldrons that they have on. Gluing both of those on and making the backpack a permanent feature. which leaves me with this so far. I can then add Angron's chains to the chest piece and the backpack, just to the connection point of the vent, using plenty of glue and plenty of liquid cement, just to make sure that the bond is as secure as possible, because they are quite small parts. As you can see here from it's at this point where I opt to use some cabling rather than the chains, just because I can tie it in again with the 40k aesthetic just a little bit more, just coming out of that hole in the chest, as I wasn't a big fan of the spikes that were there. So as you can see, that's the cabling running to his back. Again, using some sprue glue just to kind of hold it into place. Finally, I'll create some butcher's nails just with some piece of cabling that I've got left over, assembling the head as instructed and just gluing that to the base of the head. I then put glue on the base of the neck and prodded that in with a knife. Before finally deciding on a weapon, as much as I like the axe, I think the pose definitely fits the sword better. As is quite evident here. With just a little bit of fiddling just to get the positioning right, I think we're ready for the final reveals. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave a comment and let us know what your favourite conversion was, or how we should paint them up in a future video. Be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed it, or if you didn't, just let us know what we did wrong. Bye for now.